number one. It is being recorded. It is live on YouTube as well. It is being recorded live on YouTube. If you can please put your mics on mute. There will be a chance for Q&A. We're just trying to sort out the chat session very shortly. So without further ado, I apologize for the delay in start. We have just had some technical challenges, but it's now been overcome. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Yahya. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Islamic Circles is honored to welcome Professor Ahmet Davutoglu, who's a former Prime Minister of Turkey and a foreign minister and a distinguished political scientist as a research professor at several universities. We're here tonight to discuss Professor Ahmed's latest work, Systemic Earthquake and the Struggle for World Order, just published by University of Cambridge Press. So our format tonight will be a half-hour conversation about the book, followed by 30 minutes of questions and answers about it. We encourage our listeners around the world to write their questions in the chat room with their name, institutional affiliation, and country. Out of the many we receive, our team will select the most interesting or pertinent to put to you. We apologize we can't have everybody's questions, but you understand with the high volume we have to be selective. So, Assalamu alaikum and welcome, Professor Ahmed, to Islamic Circle.
Alaikum salam. Wa alaikum salam. Thank you very much. Ramadan
How are you?
Ramadan Kareem. Best regards and greetings to all Muslim community in Britain.
Thank you very much. And obviously we'll have listeners from around the world as well. But yes. Thank you. And I hope your fasting is going well.
Yes, alhamdulillah. But this year it is a sad Ramadan because of this COVID-19 crisis. All the holy places are empty, like the mosque in Istanbul. But still it is a time of deep insight, contemplation and thinking. So alhamdulillah, everything is fine.
If Allah asks us to be secluded, it's because he wishes us to become intimate with him, to become close with him. You know, inshallah. There's the wisdom behind this, the seclusion of the world. So, first of all, would you like to outline the nature and elements, the structural, economic, political, ecological elements of your work, what you call the systemic earthquake in the Eurasian African heartland that it's now facing? In other words, can you set the scene for our listeners, paint a picture of this systemic earthquake that we're now living through?
You know, it is an analysis of changes in post-Cold War era. But as you know, when Francis Fukuyama declared the end of history in 1989, I was a young academician. At that time, I wrote some articles, submitted some papers in international conference, and published a book, Civilizational Transformation, in 1994, claiming that history did not end. The opposite is true, that history will be accelerating much faster than before. Because at that time, I claimed that it is not the end of history or the ultimate victory of liberalism, but a civilizational transformation from modernity to globality. There will be many more challenges in front of us. That was my idea and my views on this change of Cold War in 1989, 1991. And now, in this book, I am trying to explain how this history has been accelerated and what happened in the last 30 years. As we claimed at that time, and history testified true, the history is moving very fast. What I say as systemic earthquake, in short, is that in modern times, after all great wars, there was some sort of convention or international congress or some international institutionalization, like 30 Years' War. After 30 Years' War, we had Westphalian peace. Then after Napoleonic Wars, there was Congress of Vienna in 1815. After First World War, there was League of Nations. After Second World War, there was United Nations and Bretton Woods system. What I was telling, end of Cold War was end of a great big war, big scale war. But there was no international convention. There was no new international institutionalization, no international congress. So therefore, there was no new world order as it was claimed in early 1990s. What happened that 4 earthquakes have happened in the last 30 years, I am saying. The first one was geopolitical earthquake in 1991, when the Warsaw Pact and Soviet Union was collapsed. And Euro-Asian heartland, Rimland, in fact, from Baltic Sea up to China, has been shaken. Earthquake is a good analogy to understand the aftershocks of these earthquakes. None of the crises after this earthquake has been fixed with a peace. That has been a cease of fire, an era of long ceasefires. Like in Ukraine, still we have crisis. In Georgia, we have crisis, potential crisis. In Azerbaijan, Armenian dispute, and in many places. Second biggest earthquake, in that sense, in political order, was this security earthquake after 9/11. So after the first earthquake, there was a sense of democracy and liberalization. But after 9/11, instead of freedom and liberalization, security and more security came to the picture and became the essence of world order. And the intervention to Afghanistan and Iraq, still neither Afghanistan nor Iraq, nor any question of this security earthquake has been resolved. The third biggest earthquake was economic earthquake in 2008, when there was a big economic crisis, the biggest crisis after 1929. And that crisis has shaken the structures of developed economies in Europe. In fact, Brexit is an aftershock of this earthquake. Also, there was not new international economic organization to readjust the balances of economic order in the world. The fourth earthquake was structural earthquake in 2011, the Arab Spring. Arab Spring is not just a phenomenon of Arab world. It became a global phenomenon because of refugee crisis, because of the collapse of national sovereignty in many nation states, in Syria, Libya, Yemen, in many places, the nation-state unit has been shaken. So what I am saying in this book, in the first chapters of the book, is that because of all these earthquakes, and because of none of the questions or crises out of these earthquakes has been resolved, it has been accumulated and became a systemic earthquake, which means national, global, international system itself became crisis. And they lost the ability to solve the problems of world order. And in fact, it is an interesting coincidence. My book has been published in January this year, and COVID-19 crisis did emerge same month. In fact, the first article I wrote was in 2017, March, after in a brainstorming e-global journal after post-Trump situation in US and in global affairs. And the book has appeared in January. And now I have written an introduction to Turkish translation of this book. And there I have analyzed that COVID-19 is the litmus test of the systemic earthquake. So the system itself is in crisis, and the crisis, national, regional, or global crisis, they became a systemic crisis, and everything is affecting everything. So COVID-19, in fact, is the first symptom of this large-scale systemic earthquake in global era. That's mainly the idea of systemic earthquake.
Okay, thank you. So to quote Antonio Gramsci, the old world is dying and the new world struggles to be born. Now is the time of monsters. So as the book charts, the old world of global governance set up by the victors of World War II is dying. And in the interim, even the architects of that system are retreating into competitive ethno-nationalisms and putting up borders with regional hegemons and willing to face global challenges. But how can the new world that struggles to be born, in your vision, an ethical and stable polycentric global system, or regional orders, as you term it, how can that come into being? but not allow atrocities like the treatment of the Uyghurs or the Rohingya go unchecked?
In fact, this is the biggest challenge of humanity in history. This is a transformation from modernity to globality, as I say. And in fact, the 21st century is starting right now, because all the issues of 20th century is still on the table. And now it is time to rethink what has happened in last centuries and what will be the future of humanity. Of course, globalization is a new phenomenon. But again, in the book, in one chapter, I am analyzing, and I am saying that the globalization is not the first incident. In the past, there were different small-scale globalizations in the past. I am making an analogy of post-Alexandrian area and Athenian democracy and post-Alexandrian area. In fact, from a small unit, city-state, Alexander the Great has established a big empire. This was a limited globalization in ancient times. And three responses did emerge out of this. Stoic response to establish a new order, cynic response to go back inside and try to be away of this globalization, limited globalization, let me say, try to escape to the smaller units, like Diogenes' response against Alexander the Great, and the third is Epicurean response. Now, a similar situation we are facing today. What we need is a new paradigm. In fact, there are three options. Either there will be a global peace connected to national and regional order, or there will be a cynic response where people will try to go back to the smaller units, either to the tribes or modern tribes like ethno-nationalism, or back to the inward-looking escape to the smaller scales. Now we are facing these two challenges. Either we will be able to create a new global sense of global order, in which all the human existence, there will be a sense of common existence, or every nation, every tribe, every region will try to take care of themselves, which is cynic response. Now, this is the challenge. And in fact, post-COVID era has become, in that sense, like a litmus test of my thesis of systemic earthquake. And now we are facing a question. We are now in such a threshold, historic threshold, where the humanity is facing the same crisis everywhere in the world. In China, in Europe, in US, in Amazons. Nobody can escape. And this COVID-19 doesn't recognize ethnicity or nationality or tribal origin or religion. So now it is time to rethink what we are facing. And every human being now is under the same threat. I can give you how I am approaching to this question based on ecological destiny of humanity. In 2010, on the climate change summit in Mexico, before that, there was a summit of foreign ministers. All foreign ministers came together in the United Nations to discuss climate change. I am giving some details of this in my book as well. It was a shocking experience for me because every foreign minister was reading a written text of national position vis-a-vis climate change. I was 7th or 8th foreign minister out of 70, around 70 nations, they come together. And when it came to me, I told to my colleagues, I said, yes, I have a written text as well. This is our national position as Turkey. But in certain situation, the mission of us as foreign ministers is just to represent our national view, national position. But there are certain issues where we have to act not as foreign ministers of nation states, but we have to act as interior ministers, domestic affairs ministers of humanity. One of these cases is ecological issues. Because if there is no ontological existence, there cannot be political existence. If there is an ecological disaster, there will be no national unit or national position because everybody will lose. Now, our mission here is to speak on behalf of humanity rather than on behalf of just nation states. Then I suggest not to continue with written texts of national positions, but to make a brainstorming on what will be the future of ecology. Now, the same is valid for COVID-19. Now, about health issue. Now we are facing the same common destiny. Now we have an option in front of us. Either the intellectuals, politicians, decision makers, opinion leaders, they will come to a position that regardless of their ethnic, religious, national backgrounds, they will have a sense of common destiny, and they will produce a new paradigm of order, where all nations, all civilizations, all religions will be respected, but the umbrella will be humanity altogether. If this is not achieved, there will be other earthquakes, because now the system is not able to solve any question. I know the UN system, I worked there for several years. UN system today is at the weakest position. Regardless of the works of Secretary General, which I really admire, Antonio Guterres is my close friend, very efficient, direct to the point, a humanitarian person, but despite of all of his warnings, still P5 are talking on their national interest, and US is fighting, blaming China, China is blaming US, but both are blaming to WHO. So this is not the case. Now what we need is a new understanding of common destiny of humanity and an interdependency between national, regional, and global orders. If that interdependency is not well addressed, like the refugee crisis we will be facing, Syrian refugees or Afghan refugees is a national issue, but it became a global issue. So you cannot limit these issues to national or regional dimensions just. There is a need of a new paradigm of global order.
Thank you, Professor. So in your 5th chapter, you mentioned 5 principles, and I'll list them here, which can help us avoid global war or global autocracy in favor of global, what you call global democracy. So inclusiveness, internal consistency, interest optimization, implementation of the power structure, and institutionalization. And then you go on in your 6th chapter, you argue that this global democracy can succeed with the emergence of what you call post-national democracies founded on inclusive citizenship. Now, my question to you is, as enticing as this vision of global democracy and post-nationalism sounds, does it not seem almost utopian? How would you convince a realist or a skeptic that this is achievable and that the forces of disorder and selfishness won't overcome this?
Let me say another anecdote, just to answer this question and to explain how I am approaching the issue. In fact, this is your question is the basic challenge for all of us. 2 years ago, when I was writing this book, 2018, I think October or November, I was in Kazakhstan, invited by the president of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, for a brainstorming session. And there were many participants, former prime ministers, presidents, ministers of foreign affairs, leading historians, from Barroso to Karzai, many of our friends, we were together around 50, 60 leading policymakers and intellectuals. And the question was, what will be the future of the world order or Euro-Asian order, etc. I realized during the sessions, I observed, and when my session came, Nick Roney, the BBC Hard Talk interviewer, was the moderator. I made an analysis and I said, in this room, I have seen 2 opposite positions. One is utopic optimists. The other one is nihilistic pessimism. Yes, today in the world, there are these 2, in last 40 years, 30 years, we have seen both of these. Utopic optimists, like the end of history, the ultimate victor of liberalism, an easy way of democratization. These are utopic optimists. The other one is, especially in last years, apocalyptic views. And there are many scenarios that the humanity is going to a disaster, not to a heaven. In fact, end of history was a utopic picture of heaven. And now the new challenge is not that optimism, but the new challenge is nihilistic pessimism. I was against this utopic optimism of end of history. Now I am against this nihilistic pessimism. And when I said this, Nikron, what is your position? I said, I am a realist optimist. When I am making an analysis, I am realist. Therefore, in the first chapter of my book, you can see a very realistic analysis of the existing situation, that there is a crisis in national level, regional level, global level. This is what I can say process analysis, or the picture you are describing the situation. But then, as an intellectual, as what I believe in Islam as well, as ahsen taqvim, one of the character of humanity. My mission is not to leave this in this realistic picture, but to provide an alternative. Our mission is not to create pessimist approach or to surrender pessimism. We have to understand the fact as it is, without hiding the realities, to understand the realities, to go in-depth analysis of realities. But a responsible person, as a human being, as a Muslim, as an intellectual, as a politician, my mission is not to leave that reality as it is. My mission and the mission of everybody is to create an alternative. Will we be able to have an alternative today? I think we can. In my book, I am trying to do this. In my political life, I am working very hard for this. And there I established 5 principles, as you described. The most important principle is inclusivity. Of course, internal consistency, implementation of power, interest optimization, institutionalization. These are the key factors of a new paradigm for national, regional, and global order. And global democracy is facing a challenge today. After COVID-19, there were several speculations, many articles were written that the world is going to autocratic dictatorial regimes. I think this is oversimplification. Like those who were claiming that the world is going towards a global democracy in the 1990s, those who are underlying or claiming today that the world is going to an oligarchy or to an autocratic regime, that's also not true. When we look at the performance of nation states in COVID-19, Western or Eastern, democratic or authoritarian, those systems where the people trust those systems, there is a trust between people and the state, they were able to deal with this crisis in a much better performance than the others. But those who are populistic autocrats, they were not able to manage the crisis properly. Like President Trump in US, like Italian, even British case, very populistic approach under the umbrella of democracy. Also totalitarian regimes like China. But when you look at how those who are managing properly, like Germany, like Netherlands, like Japan, like South Korea, like Singapore, like Taiwan, Eastern or Western, democracy or semi-democracy, whatever it is, the important is how to deal with the crisis in an efficient manner and how to establish a psychological relation with your people to create a trust. Now, I don't think it is a utopic approach. Today, if there is any renewal of democracy in all levels, there's a chance for the humanity. But if we cannot do it, it is our test. It is a challenge of us, for us. We cannot escape this challenge. We cannot surrender the realistic picture. I am always against the surrender we are, of course, as Muslims, we surrender to destiny, but we don't know the destiny. Our mission is, since we cannot claim any destiny, final destiny, because it is not in our knowledge, we have to do our best to provide an alternative. Sometimes it could be seen like utopic, but it is up to us, up to our performance, whether it will be a reality or a utopia. Today in the world, if you ask me, I know many of the leaders and or at least states from my political experience, what we need today is a visionary leadership. Visionary leadership. Vision is sometimes dreamy. Vision is always a utopia, but vision is the basis for a new order. If you are prisoner of the realities, you cannot develop a vision. Mm-hmm. In all the civilization history, visionary thinkers, visionary leaders changed the history from a very pessimistic situation to a much more proper understanding of order. Now it is our mission, our duty, our responsibility to make that change. We cannot surrender to the pessimistic psychology of those who are claiming that the world is going to a hell. Our mission is to make the world and the humanity, we cannot make heaven, but a much better place to live in order to achieve heaven in the afterworld.
So in your final chapter, you set out a vision of inclusive regional governance, namely achieving regional order by recreating the UN as a radically inclusive institution. Although you mentioned many dimensions of this reconfiguration of the United Nations, I'd like you to focus focus on your riposte to Huntington's ideas of clashing civilizations, namely your idea of interactive civilizations in the plural. And of great interest to me when I was reading your book was your formulative parameters of civilization that enable us to see it as a dynamic system. So would you please spell this out more for our listeners?
As I said, now we are, in fact, that I wrote the civilizational parameters in early 1990s and used in this book at the theoretical framework as well. In my book, Civilization Transformation in 1994, I tried to formulate this. Why? As I said at that time, and after 30 years, I think the developments have proven that it was true. What we are living today is a transformation from modernity to globality. 30 years is not a long time in history. Like 1789 was French Revolution, Napoleonic War was, or Congress of Vienna was in 1815. Similarly now, from that century to this, now the new century is emerging at this moment. What is the difference? Modernity was a Eurocentric experience, human experience. It based on a Eurocentric approach. And it claimed that the center of humanity is Europe, and the Enlightenment claimed reason, progress, the idea of progress itself, claimed that that was the end of God, the end of religion, the end of ideology later it was claimed. And there was an expectation, even Toynbee and many others claimed this in different forms. Toynbee has changed his approach later. But as if European civilization was the ultimate formulation of human civilizational accumulation. But the globality has shown us that it was not true. The authentic civilizations has been revived. There has been a revival of authentic civilizations. Today, we cannot say that there is one continental or religious or civilizational center of humanity. Humanity is everywhere, in every computer, in every room, in every city, regardless of the time and space control. And this is a new phenomenon of humanity. Therefore, we have to understand this. When Huntington wrote his article, I was, to be frank, I read his articles before. I was shocked in 1993 when I wrote this. I read his articles, his article on civilizational clash of civilization. This was the biggest, let me say, misuse of a very noble concept of civilization. Now, after that article, until now, we had enough experience. Either there will be a global monopoly of culture, like Eurocentrism. This is not possible anymore. There will be no monopoly of a cultural monopoly in a cultural world order. That it cannot be anymore. Second option is clash of cultures or civilizations, as Huntingtonian paradigm, let me say. This will be the end of civilization in real sense, because clash of civilization will be destroying the basic value structure of humanity. I am, of course, as a Muslim, I have lived and I am a defender of Islamic civilization. But I know that you can be a member or defender of a civilization only if you are defending human civilization as a whole. You cannot say your civilization is isolated. Huntington misused this concept in order to justify Bosnian crisis, in fact. Fukuyama declared the end of history as the ultimate victory of liberalism. When the Bosnian crisis did emerge, there was a need to accuse someone. If there is an end of history, and if there is an American hegemony and of global order, who is responsible for this? And Huntington simplified the question and said, civilizations are responsible, not US, not liberalism, not other civilizations. Muslim civilization, Orthodox civilization fought against each other. And even he suggested to provoke a clash between Muslim and Chinese civilization in the future for the survival of Western hegemony. This is the worst misuse of concepts for a strategic opportunism. Now, what is the alternative? There cannot be a monopoly, cultural monopoly anymore. It is impossible. Neither Eurocentrism, nor Afrocentrism, nor Asiocentrism. Humanity is everywhere, living together. Second is that if there is a clash of civilization, everybody will lose. It will not be winner and loser. That was the big mistake of Huntington. He thought that if Chinese and Muslim civilization fought against each other, US will be winning. In fact, in US or Western societies, the second biggest religion is Islam, and Chinatowns are everywhere. The third, what is the option? What I am proposing in my book is a new civilizational interaction, a new vision of cultural order in the world, where all civilizations will be respected, all civilizations' basic characteristics will be represented, and they will be interacting. And here, I can give you, if we have enough time, I can say for three very big historical civilizational interactions, and now we are at the fourth phase. The first one is, as I said, post-Alexandrian area, the age of enlightenment, let me say, 5th century, 6th century before Christ, and after Alexandrian order. That was a big interaction of civilizations. Mediterranean civilization, Mesopotamian civilization, Iranian civilization, Indian civilization, they mixed. The cities of Alexandria in different places, in fact, was a transaction of these civilizations. Second biggest civilizational interactions did emerge until Islamic civilization. When during the time of Umar radiallahu anh, all the biggest civilizations of the humanity were united under the umbrella of Islamic civilization based on the concept of Tawheed. And later in 16th century, almost everywhere, from Atlantic Ocean up to China, Islamic civilization did create a new form of city, a new knowledge, concept of knowledge, a new sense of being around Tawheed. And you can see Ibn Sina or Ibn Rushd. One is in Central Asia, the other one is in Spain or Andalusia, but they were based on the same knowledge structure. And 16th century was the peak of this, when Ottomans, Safavids, and Baburs, three imperial orders, controlled all Afro-Eurasia. That was the reason why European discovery was needed to go to India, to Africa. Then you know the history of the discovery of American continent. Now, what I am saying, this is civilization interaction. Chinese, Indian, Iranian, Turanic, African, Mediterranean civilizations were under Islamic civilization. The third biggest civilization interaction did emerge in 19th century, beginning of 19th century, under Western colonialism. Modernity, Industrial Revolution, French Revolution, and the values out of these, they spread to everywhere. And they created some sort of interaction, and Western civilization did transform other civilizations. Now it is time that Western civilization itself will be transformed by other civilizations, will be affected by other civilizations. This is the third phase, where the third big civilization interaction, as under the British Empire, where there is no sunset. So now we are at the fourth phase. When I looked at the civilization experiences in the past, I identified in one of my articles published in 2006 that there are 6 civilization parameters where civilizations did emerge. The first one is ontological self-perception. Without defining the human being itself, himself or herself, you cannot establish a new civilization. Like Islamic civilization was based on Tawheed, because with the belief of Tawheed, a new concept of humanity did emerge. Second is reformulation, recategorization, resystematization of knowledge. In all these phases, there has been a new resystematization of knowledge. Classification of knowledge by Al-Farabi or Al-Ghazali, or in modernity by Kant, that has been transformed the epistemology. Based on this ontological and epistemological reformulation, a new value set of values did emerge. This knowledge, knowledge values set, the basic norms of humanity, the basic norms of social life, ethical norms, that is the basis of civilizations in the history. If a civilization as a mentality created this substructure, then the legal, political, and economic order has been specified by this value structure, by this substructure. Now, what I am saying is, today we are facing a new civilization challenge. Western civilization is over. I mean, modernity is as it is over. Now, all civilizations have to redefine themselves, and there should, in a inclusive manner, not exclusive manner. Today, in India, we are facing big crisis for Muslim minorities there, because Indian civilization has been reinterpreted in a very narrow, cynic way. And in some Muslim societies, in Iraq and Syria or in different places, tribal identity, in fact, became like a poison to destroy Muslim cities. When Daesh did destroy mosques, churches in Mosul or in Deir ez-Zor or other Raqqa. Similarly, this is the big challenge for Muslims and Western people everywhere, and Chinese. Well, what they are doing in Eastern Turkestan for Uyghur people, they are trying to destroy a legacy which has affected 12th, 13th century Chinese civilization. Cannot be understood without understanding Central Asian Turkish culture. Even Chinese medicine has been called as Uyghur medicine in the past. So either some political cynics will be destroying civilizational accumulation of humanity, or those responsible, visionary thinkers and political leaders will come up and say, we will respect all civilizations. That's what I am saying. And here the city life is, as I have explained in the book, will be one of the main parameters of civilization formation in the future. Now it is time to produce an alternative, to create a new alternative of cultural order based on the respect to everybody, every civilizational accumulation and every religion. That is the only solution for humanity.
Thank you. I mean, I don't know if we have time for my final question, but maybe if
we have time. We have time.
Okay, so
I don't have any time limit. We can continue until sahur. No problem. We can
fantastic.
Continue.
Why don't we do that? It's a fantastic evening. Bismillah.
Thank you. So this isn't a question related to your book. This is more a question from a Muslim living in the West to you, okay, as a member of Muslim minority. So, and I'm reading your book with this mindset as a minority, living as a minority, and also we live as a diaspora. We are connected, Muslims in Britain are connected to, many different homelands, South Asia, Arab world, Turkey, and so on. So my question is, after having looked at your book, how does your concept of post-national inclusive democracy include diasporas? Whether these diasporas are ethnic in nature or whether they're religious in nature. For example, it seems to me that currently the Muslim diaspora in the West, coming from different ethnic homelands, has often been treated merely as a strategic asset by Muslim majority nations to advance their own interests, whether in the name of the nation or in the name of the ummah. How do diasporas become included rather than excluded in your envisaged polycentric global order that strives for universal inclusion? In other words, can diasporas be more than just minorities?
I think this, again, I will make some historical references to understand the future challenges. This is also the biggest challenge. Diasporas, not even today, in the history and even in the future, will be the biggest challenge for orders, political orders. It is very interesting experience for me. In 2002, I gave a conference at Princeton University, 2002, March or April, after 9/11. There was a very, shaky psychology after 9/11 in US. And there were several questions of what will be happening, Muslim-West relations, the future of America, US, and diaspora, multi-ethnicity, etc. I said in my speech that this is not a new challenge. This challenge was valid for Roman Empire and for all big imperial traditions in the past. I understand the psychology of American society after 9/11, but what US today needs is not a new Caesar. US today needs a new Marcus Aurelius. Because US is not America of Theodore Roosevelt or others where there were not many ethnicities or nationalities like Roman Empire of Caesar. And I told them there is a need of restoration of American system, and such a restoration could be achieved only by a new Marcus Aurelius, not a Caesar. And this new Marcus Aurelius could be only a black president. This was 6 years before President Obama became president. When President Obama became president, I became foreign minister. This, why I gave this example. Usually, big imperial traditions, big political orders start from a much more homogeneous society, but later became a cosmopolitan society. This has been the fact for Roman Empire, as I said. During the time of Caesar, Rome, city of Rome was more pure Roman. But when Marcus Aurelius came as a Stoic philosopher, a philosopher king, Rome itself as a city was cosmopolitan. Almost all religious ethnic groups came to Rome because Rome was the center of the order. And it is very interesting, after 30 years after Marcus Aurelius, Septimius Severus, a black emperor, African emperor, leader, became a Roman emperor. So if these big imperial traditions are able to integrate diaspora and transform them in a new sort of, in that case, not citizenship in the past, but a owner of the order, host of the order, then that tradition may continue. Otherwise, that homogeneous character, if it is trying to be kept in a new, in an autocratic way, you cannot survive. In Islamic civilization, we face the same question. From Umayyads to Abbasids, there was a concept of Mawali. Mawali means non-Arab. Umayyads were not only Arab, but Qurayshi. But when the empire, the state, the political order reached to Central Asia, to North Africa, there was a need of a new approach. And Mawali, Abbasid state, was an attempt to integrate Mawali, non-Arabs, into Muslim society. Therefore, Islamic civilization continued to survive and expand. If Umayyad mentality was continuing, it would have been very difficult. Same in Ottoman state, there was a concept of Yeniçeri. Yeniçeri means new soldier integrated from Christian communities of the Ottoman state. Now, the same challenge is valid for Western societies. British Empire, if it was pure Britain, if British army didn't go to India, there wouldn't be Indian Muslims or Indian Hindus in London. Today, you don't see, let's say, Muslims or Hindus from India in Brazil, not many. Why in Britain? Because London became the center of the order, and from the periphery to the center, there was a move, like Roman Empire, like Muslim states. Now, the challenge for the states, for the center, is how to integrate this population, how to inclusively, how to get them. The challenge for the diaspora is how to adapt to this new political atmosphere or socio-political environment. Once she was the chairperson of Conservative Party, as you know, Warissa, I knew her well, and you can see a Muslim lady can come to the peak of British party system, but still she was complaining about the exclusive character of the society, of the political society. Now this challenge will continue. Unfortunately, from Obama, we didn't go to another cosmopolitan, inclusive leader, but we went to Trump, like after Marcus Aurelius, Commodus. He's somebody total different. This is the very big challenge. Now, diasporas, and even in modern times, I am sure you are well aware, Napoleon Bonaparte, when he invited Jewish leaders, at that time it was more Jewish question. Now it is, diaspora is more Muslim question, as if it is. And he asked very pragmatic questions. What is the ultimate loyalty of Jewish community, of a Jew, to the community or to the state? Now, if this question is being asked, it is difficult to solve the problem. The new democracy, national, regional, or global, let me say in first, national, should not ask the citizens about the loyalty, should ask about responsibilities, duties, and rights, human rights and responsibilities. If it becomes just a loyalty, a Muslim will face a problem. Of course, a Muslim will have concern regarding Bosniak issue in 1993, now Rohingya issue, because that sense of solidarity as Ummah is not conflicting with the sense of loyalty as a citizen to British state, because Britain, after this, or any other state, is not just a monocultural entity. The grandfather of British Prime Minister was a Turkish, as you know. Are we proud of that? It is something else. Is he proud? Also something else. It is not an issue, but this is the fact. Rome, as Rome has experienced, London will be much more cosmopolitan. Similarly, Istanbul is today much more cosmopolitan. Why? Because whenever there is a crisis in Balkans, Bosniaks, Albanians, Turks, they escaped to Turkey as a safe haven. Why did they go to Central Europe? Because for them, the center means Istanbul. Or Syrian refugees came, or Afghan refugees, or Caucasian refugees, Cherokees, Abkhazians, came to Turkey because that is the center. It is our responsibility how to deal with this question. Now, there is a need of a new approach to how to deal with this question in a new concept of democracy. And in this concept of democracy is a pluralistic global order should be together with a pluralistic national order. But if national order is not pluralistic, global order cannot be pluralistic. If American president declares Muslim ban, there will be an anti-Americanism everywhere. Or Muslim ban or any other action, anti-Mexican. So nobody is immune in this society. Like virus, this COVID-19 virus, it is affecting everywhere. Now it is time to have a visionary approach where we are approaching to all human beings as equal beings in all aspects or dimensions of life. This is basically how I see it. Is a challenge, big challenge for diasporas, but there are good examples that this big challenge has been a story of success. As you said, Muslim nation states should be very careful not to risk Muslim communities in Western societies. But it is not only Muslim nation states, but also Western nation states, how to deal with this issue. If you have these Islamophobic tendencies or exclusionary approach in Western societies, there will be anti-Westernism in the Muslim world. Or if you have anti-Westernism in the Muslim world, there will be some reactions in the West. Now, the the wise people of all societies should come together, wise people, to end this culture of hatred, exclusionism, and to provide an alternative of integrity, inclusiveness, and a holistic approach to human problems.
Thank you very much for that very fulsome and interesting answer. Mizan, we have about 10 minutes left of our scheduled hour. How are we doing with the questions? Because I don't...
the chat function, unfortunately, doesn't seem to be working. I'm not sure why on Zoom. I have. So I think what we can do, if people want to ask questions, they can raise their hands. I can see people raising their hands on the
Okay.
So chat is not working properly, chatting?
I'm not sure why. I'm
But
not
we
sure why.
promised the listeners to answer all the questions, so maybe there is a need of have another session to fulfill our promise.
Well, I mean, I'm hoping that inshallah you'll take our invitation to come to London and
Okay,
host
okay.
you.
Inshallah, face to face. I want to
Face to
see all
face.
of you. Thank you.
Definitely. But we can take some questions from the floor. Yahya,
Professor Iftikhar Malik, why don't we
Sure.
bring him in?
Professor, go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. And very nice listening to you. I never met you, but I have been to your beautiful city twice. I gave a lecture about 3 months ago in one of the universities in Konya and just published a book. And there is a chapter on Konya and Maulana Rum. I think you are...
Next time, please let me know, Professor Malik. Let me know so that I will, we can have chance to meet and
Oh, very kind of you. My concern is that, I mean, I know that you are a professor, I appreciate that, and you have been in politics for a long time. So you look at these issues in a sort of political way, but my concern is that, you know, there are lots of intellectual issues that, especially on the Muslim side, we have to address. And sometimes I'm worried that West becomes an alibi for many of our problems. And we sort of transfer the responsibility of our own legacies onto the West. I know West is party to some of the issues, but then I think within the Muslim world, we need to do lots of things in terms of intellectual reconstruction of our heritage, more tolerance for all kind of pluralities that you were talking about, empowerment of women and minorities, whether they're Muslim minorities or non-Muslim minorities or Muslim minorities. So I think we need to reconnect with some of those traditions which were the hallmark of Islamic civilization in the early period. And Mr. Alawi, who was, I think, the minister in Iraq many years ago, he wrote a wonderful book, The Crises of Islamic Civilization. So I think we need to address some of those challenges. I don't want to sound like a pessimist, and we need people like you who should raise these issues, but I do think that Muslim intellectuals, Muslim politicians, they have to, you know, stand up to those issues that we have been facing for a long time, and we can't transfer the entire responsibility to the West. When I look at the East, for example, China, South Korea, Japan, they have taken a new leaf in their history. And then I look at Europe. I mean, they are sort of Atlantic regions are forging ahead. And I've seen changes in Africa as well. I think we, the Muslim regions, whether it's Near East, it's South Asia, it's Central Asia, it's North Africa, there are things which are holding us back. I'm not just talking about economic development, but I'm deeply concerned about political stability. The 40% of the refugees, maybe more than that, or happen to be Muslims. So I think we are in a very dire situation. So I think intellectuals, political leaders should get inspiration from people like you. And we need to, you know, put our own houses in order, because we are left somewhere in the middle. We are neither part of this West, not part of this emerging East. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Malik. I fully agree. Of course, the topic was not on the crisis in the Muslim world. As someone who had experienced direct crisis, many crises in the Muslim world, like in Somalia, in Palestine, Syria, Egypt, I have been several times in these crisis points in Iraq. I could be much more pessimistic than you, because unfortunately today, neither intellectually nor politically or economically, Muslim societies are stable and productive. And the problem, if you ask me what is the basic problem in the Muslim world, is intellectual freedom. Without a new mentality in Muslim world, without having freedom of thought, freedom of expression, you cannot address the issues you mentioned. Political problems, we have many. Economic crisis we have. I can give you tens of reasons why Muslims are facing such a tragedies in different places, and we should blame to us, not to others. We should blame first to us, then we can blame others. All of these are interconnected. But biggest, I was in Qatar last year talking on Malik bin Nebi. There was a question asked to me by one of the participants. As an intellectual and as a politician, what is the most important problem in the Muslim world? I said, neither economic underdevelopment nor political instability. These are important, but more important is absence of intellectual freedom. Without being free to discuss our problems, you cannot solve anything. Today in the Muslim world, why do we have the issue, the fanatic approach of Daesh or tribalism everywhere? When I went to Baghdad and I was, mediator in different crises, I explained in my book Sunni Shiite tension in Iraq or Syrian-Israeli peace talks, a reconciliation between Hamas and Al-Fatih in Palestine, reconciliation among Somalian groups in many of these occasions. I unfortunately, very sadly realized how the certain very restrictive, exclusionary mentality is creating problem for everybody in Muslim societies. Baghdad, 10th century, was much more pluralistic than today. There were Christians, there were Jews, there were Sunnis, Shiites living together. But today, Baghdad, the golden city of Islamic civilization, is divided. This neighborhood is Shiite, but not only Shiite, but from this wing of Shiite. This is Sunni neighborhood. This is how the modern nation building did not function properly in Muslim societies. The nation states in Muslim societies usually based on one ethnicity or sect, and the rest are excluded, like in the case of Saddam, the Sunni identity, or in the case of Bashar Assad or Hafiz Assad in Syria, Alawite identity. The rest are excluded. Or in Egypt, we have different other issues. Now it is time to discuss all these issues without any prejudice. This is our problem. So only we can solve this problem. So after having all these experiences, I could easily be more pessimistic than you, Professor Malik, but it is not time of being just realistic or pessimistic, but it is time to have to create a synergy of a new vision. This is basically how I see, but I fully agree. We should not be following an easy way to blame others, but we should first make a self-criticism. Why in Ramadan, in some cities, there are luxury iftars, ultra luxury, but in some others, these refugees cannot find bread. How come we can talk on social justice? Or in many Muslim societies, there is no freedom of thought. And the leaders, they don't want to be criticized. They just want to have people of yes people, let me say, yes sir people. No. Why don't we have universities in high-ranking categories of the world? These are all our challenges. Our generation was an interesting generation. I'm sure, Professor Malik, we are almost same generation. We had a traditional, maybe in childhood, youth, traditional. We observed modernity. Now we are living in globality, global. Now it is time to deliver a much better situation to next generations everywhere in the world.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to reading your book.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yahya, we've got about 3 questions. It's your prerogative.
Okay, where are these questions?
Okay, so one from Imam Qasim. Can I just unmute him? He'll say it very quickly.
Yeah, will he pop up on the screen, I hope?
Yeah, he'll pop up the screen. Imam Qasim, go ahead.
Your question, I wrote it to you, so let me rephrase it.
Yeah.
My main question is about the, you know, in the, let me see here. Okay, in the past system that which we are looking, you know, we are now in the transition with the systemic earthquake. In the past system, as we all agree that religion was sidelined in the worldview or shaping of the framing of the worldview, religion was sidelined, but after now in the process of the new transition, we see all around the world religiosity is much more part of equation of the shaping the, you know, world, how it is, or vision of the world, how it is should be. And in that sense, we have whatever we are encountering in upcoming world system, religiosity will be much more at the center as compared to the past system. Past system gave us two big world wars, and it was catastrophic. And but in the transition, we do see a lot of conflict where the religion or religiously framed conflict, not the religion play there, but religiously framed in the discourse of this conflict. What is my question from the professor? And I forgot, when I wrote to you at the first, I would like to thank you also for organizing this and for coming in the program, and may Allah reward you all of these things. And it's definitely a very good conversation that you set up here. My question is that what is the way for upcoming systemic shape that which we are encountering will be, what is the way to avoid the similar catastrophes like World War I and World War II, or other catastrophes that you know, we had encountered in the past system? Because it's clear that we are getting into a new system. So how religion is part of this system now, it's much more, and how we are able to avoid that.
In fact, the key term, as I wrote in my book, and as Brother Yahya has summarized very properly and direct to the point, basic key concept is inclusivity. In religious societies, or religiosity as well, an inclusive interpretation of religion should be taken as the base of a new approach. It is easy to exclude based on religion, but it is very difficult to include, to have an inclusive approach. You are right. Yes, in the past, in 20th century, many wars did emerge out of ideological or economic wars. And now we are facing much more challenges regarding the religiosity. What will be the future of that? But in Muslim societies, unfortunately today, let's say in Syria, Daesh did kill more Muslims than Israel in last 20 years. Or a sectarian regime in Syria did kill many more Muslims because of that sectarian difference. It is not religiosity, in fact. One sect is controlling the system and they don't want to give up. Or a circle, a family is controlling the system. They are misusing religion, like what Saddam did as a Sunni in Iraq. Assad is doing as an Alawite in Syria. Same mentality. The issue is not religiosity there. Religion has been used as an apparatus just to control the autocratic, survival of the autocratic regime. Now, we have to defend the alternative position. And there, as I agree with Professor Malik, not to blame others, but we have to approach each other in an inclusive manner as Muslims. Same for, unfortunately, we are not following very closely what's happening in India. one sectarian approach of Indian democracy, the biggest democracy in the world now, has become an open prison for Muslims. And the biggest autocracy in China became open prison for Uyghurs, Muslims there. Now it is time to promote inclusiveness everywhere. And if this approach has been integrated, assimilated in the system, then we can create an alternative. But as I suggest in my book, in last chapter, the reform of UN is needed for this. The existing reform UN structure is not inclusive itself. So first we have to deal with our nation states. Same in Turkey. For example, I established a new party. I especially, as the founders, first time ever in Turkish history, Turkish democracy, 3 non-Muslim leading personalities became founder of the party. 1 Greek, 1 Assyrian, 1 Armenian. And until now in Turkish democracy, in any Turkish political party, there was a non-Muslim founder. But we have Sunnis, Alevites, Turks, Kurds, Bosniaks, Albanians. From all segments of society, we are trying to have a new paradigm of pluralism and inclusive democracy. And this is not against Islam or Islamic values. Islam respects to every human being, every religion. And if we are together, living together in a society, that society should be structured by all these segments of the society. Similarly, in different Christian societies or Buddhist, Jewish societies, same. This is a big challenge, but our responsibility is trying to do everything possible not to try to prevent religiosity as a barrier of peace, but religiosity as a promoting factor of peace. This is the challenge and objective of us.
Yeah, we've got quite a few questions coming. We've got, especially from different continents. We've got folks from South America, all the way to Australia. It's a very international audience. So, if with your permission, there's a chap who's been waiting for quite some time, Eldorado Al-Trashi. Is that okay? Can I take a question?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think we should also, in the interest of keeping our promise to our listeners as well, we should probably cut the questions to maybe 3 more questions.
3 more questions, okay.
Good.
Overrun. Always invite the professor back if he's really willing and able to do this another time. But I think
Of course.
Shouldn't overrun.
Eldorado, yeah.
Okay, yes. Well, thank you for the host and for the professor for this session. I have actually 2 questions. Do you think that nationalism might creep into the Turkish society, being that now the large democracies and the neighboring countries are seeing a surge in nationalistic tendencies? And another question, you made a comment about a wise leader that should make wise decision in the context of this global responsibility and inclusivity. But then how do you deal with the fact that you have one leader of one major country who is going in a different way? So if you have a president of the United States deciding, I'm not gonna honor this or that, no matter what values you have to compromise and follow suit.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Nationalism is a modern artifact in Muslim societies. It is very interesting. Nationalism in the West did emerge in 19th century to unite few post-Westphalian orders, like German unity, like Italian unity. From small feudal units, a unity did emerge as a national unity. Therefore, it was a positive factor to unite societies out of these feudal orders nations did emerge. But in Muslim societies, unfortunately, since ethnic nationalism was not a fact, I mean, a legitimized fact in the Muslim history, nationalism in the Muslim society did not unite societies, but did divided societies, like in Ottoman state. Many nation states did emerge. But it was natural because modernity, modern world order was based on nation states. It is up to you how to define nation-based approach. Instead of nationalism, if there was a tendency of patriotism as a positive factor, today in Muslim societies, many countries would have been in a much better situation. But unfortunately, exclusive nationalism has been implemented until now. Therefore, in Iraq, or in Syria, or in Libya, or in Egypt, those who are controlling the society, they define the nation. Same in Turkey as well. We had this type of problems in the past, and still we have many problems in how to define nationalism. My approach is citizen-based nationalism should be accepted, rather than ethnic sectarian definition of nationalism. If the ultimate reference is citizenship, you could develop a democratic approach. But if you define nation based on ethnicity, like Arab nationalism, just Turkish or Kurdish or Iranian nationalism, there cannot be a patriotic citizenship based of nationalism. This is the big challenge today. And we have to deal with this challenge. Therefore, as I said, when I started a new political movement in Turkey, I especially wanted to have all ethnicities, all religious groups, in order to show that a non-Muslim citizen in Turkey is as patriotic as Muslims. A Sunni or Alawite, they are as patriotic as to each other, although majority are Muslim and Sunni Muslim and Turks. Kurds are part of this society. How to bring them together in a concept of citizenship. This is basically about the President of the United States. As I said, this book, in fact, in that sense, the power change in US, I was asked to write an article in March 2017 by my dear colleague, Professor Richard Fall, to participate in a discussion in a global journal. This is a big threat to a pluralistic global order. Unfortunately, President Trump, with his style of politics, with his style of rhetoric and approach, he is representing like a best example of populistic autocracy. When I define 5 criteria of inclusiveness, internal consistency, interest optimization, institutionalization and implementation, President Trump's policies are inconsistent with any of these, with all of these principles. But I don't think that this trend will continue in US. Of course, whatever is happening in US, it is affecting everybody. Like in economic crisis, the decisions of Fed is affecting all national economies because there is a dollarization of world economy. Similarly, whatever happening in US is spreading everywhere, like Hollywood movies. But now, this first America is in fact in their mind, in his mind, or in the followers of right extremists in US, is not first America, it is first WASP, white Anglo-Saxon and Protestant America. This was the old Eurocentric history. This cannot survive. I am sure after all these experiences, there will be new approaches in US and everywhere in the world.
Professor, I've got a question here from Zero Jamal from the United Kingdom, who is asking this question. Can you tell us about the thinking behind your zero problems policy? Do you still advocate for that policy, given your experience? And why was it overturned by the AKP party?
Yes, I supported this. This was a slogan, zero problems, the main principle of foreign policy in 2002 when the AK Party came to power. Why did I say this? Because in Turkish psyche, during the Cold War and after all bad experiences, tragic experiences in the last 200 years, there was an understanding that all Arabs are enemies of Turkey. Iran is enemy of Turkey. Russia is enemy of Turkey. Greek is enemy of Turkey. Serbians are enemy of Turkey, etc. So there was such a psyche that Turkey is living in a hostile environment. If you are living in if you have such a psychology of living in a hostile environment, you cannot develop any vision. You are always in defense. So in my book, Strategic Depth, I wrote in 2001 that Turkey should be cultural, economic center of attraction for other neighbors, and Turkey should improve relations with all other neighbors. Turkish interest is not to develop tense relations with the neighbors. And I think it was a successful policy until Arab Spring. Until Arab Spring, what did we achieve? With Syria, I was Minister of Foreign Affairs. We had visa liberalization with Syria. We had visa liberalization with Russia, with Iraq, with many nations around us. And with Syria, we had almost integrated in economic and cultural sense. With Russia, an arch enemy, in 2011, we had a visa liberalization policy and also free trade agreement. With Greece, in one day in 2011, when I was Minister of Foreign Affairs, we signed 35 agreements with Greece, again, an arch enemy for many Turks, which was more than the agreements of 70 years of Turkish-Greek relations, more than 70 years. So it was a successful process and principle until the neighboring nation states were able to control their countries. But when Arab Spring came, there was a big, very tough choice in front of us. Either to collaborate with the regimes oppressing their people, like in Syria, like in Egypt, like in Libya, or promoting democracy in these countries, or supporting democracy. This is not export of democracy, but if something is happening next door of you, you have to take a position. First, we tried to make reforms within we wanted to help them to make reforms. But when some of these countries killed their people with chemical weapons, like in Syria, of course, relations became tense. But more important, we were not able to find proper counterparts. Today, in many neighboring countries around Turkey, the existing governments in the center of the country, they are not able to control all the state, all the territory, like Syria, like Iraq, like Georgia, like Azerbaijan, like Ukraine, like Libya. So this is the problem, how to make this possible to develop zero problems. So it was a successful process. Our relation with Serbia, for example, when I was Minister of Foreign Affairs, when I was Prime Minister, became excellent, despite of the old, very tough relations because of Bosnian crisis. And I was mediator between Bosnia-Herzegovina and Serbia in 2011 to resolve their problems, and Turkey, Bosnia, Serbia trilateral process has started. So There were successes and there were challenges and failures. In foreign policy, you cannot achieve everything you want to achieve. But I think it is right policy. And I think one day, if the leaders of these countries realizes that instead of maximum problems with the neighboring countries, you have zero problems, then we will have a new regional order. This is what we want to achieve, a peaceful regional environment. This could be seen something like utopic, as you do. And I know history. I know that it is impossible to have zero problem even within a family. But I wanted to make a mentality change, a shocking new approach to this formula. And we were able to achieve this until Arab Spring has shaken the existing systems in the region.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions coming through. So your prerogative, Professor.
I think we're just going to wrap it up, because I think we should have a reputation as a timely series, and we keep to our time schedule. So we have a final question, and sorry, this is the Englishman in me. I'm sorry. And I have to go pray Tarawih as well. So this is Toha Salim from Istanbul, and this is about the Arab Spring. So it follows on from your previous answer, Professor. So his question is: we have seen that the Arab Spring has mostly been focused on national interest without any civilizational outlook, which you've been talking about. Do you think that an idea of a transnational movement for a new Muslim political subjectivity as an ummah can help us overcome the current hegemony of the world order, or should it only be a segregated struggle for a cosmopolitan society within the concept of nation state? As we see, for example, in Pakistan movement, the inclusive character of the constitution would not be possible without a movement around for a state around Muslim identity. Or should we not take Ummah as a reference point to build an inclusive civilization rather than taking a general multicultural nation as the basis?
I think these are not, of course, this is also a very vital question, and we can discuss more on this. On the chapter National Order, I discussed some of these issues. There are segments of identity. In another book, which was published in Turkish, like a conversation with a youth, with a young, like in a form, I discussed the issue of identity. In fact, this question is directly to the issue of identity. Usually we have one-dimensional identity approach. Therefore, in Pakistan, despite of the reference to Islam as the first nation state making reference to Islamic identity as the base of the state, Punjabi or other Punjabis descend at the center of the state, and some other identities, Sunni, Shiite identity, several identities in the past came to the picture in political arena. Some thought that we are the real, we can only protect the interest of the state. Same in Turkey, in Iraq, in Syria. In my book about this conversation with young generation, based on all these experiences, I am telling that there are segments of identity. If you are approaching or accepting one-dimensional identity, you make one reference, like Sunni reference, Shiite reference, Turkish reference, Arab reference, then the nation state is based on that. The rest being excluded. I don't think that Ummah is not invalid anymore. No. What is this? At the center of identity, the nucleus of identity is human identity. Usually, when we make reference to Muslim identity, we think that Muslim identity is the opposite of Christian identity or Western identity. No. Muslim identity is a reflection of human identity. Without having a sense of humanity in your mind, you cannot be a real Muslim. Islam is not anti-Christianity. Islam is not anti-West. I am a Muslim as individual. I am proud of that. And I was trained in Western schools, a German high school, an American university, and usually in an environment of socialist youth movement. But I decided to be Muslim. Why? Because my ontological questions were answered only by the belief of Tawheed. My human character defined my Muslim identity. Not because I didn't defend Muslim identity because I am an anti-colonialist. Yes, I am anti-colonialist. I am anti-imperialist. But this is a historical, just a narrow historical segments of last 2 centuries. But Muslim identity is from Adem alayhi salam until today. So it is beyond time and space. So first we have to accept, we have to integrate that human identity at the nucleus of us. That human identity, if we agree this, then our approach will be multicultural, multi-religious. The second segment is historical formation and civilizational identity. There, Islam is the main essence. Yes, I was born in a Muslim city, as brother Professor Malik came to Konya. Konya is full of Islamic culture, so I was trained there. My culture has been shaped there. I cannot ignore it. Also in Istanbul. It could be in London, but still in a Muslim environment you could have. And you can have some sort of close affinity to your civilizational heritage, like what I feel when I went to Lahore visiting Muhammad Iqbal, as if I am visiting my grandfather, because Muhammad Iqbal for me has defended whatever I am defending today.
Mashallah.
He is Pakistani, I am Turkish, but I can feel the same. Or Samarkand, or Damascus, or Baghdad. Yes, I am a Turkish, but I can feel myself part of this civilization legacy, but not in an exclusionary manner.
Right.
In an inclusionary manner. The third segment, but if you do not have a human identity, your Islam will be exclusionary. Not to respect humanity, but to create some approach. Then the third segment is citizenship to a nation state. I don't see this as a conflict. From that historical perspective, my Armenian colleague in my party, as a Turkish citizen, we are sharing the same civilizational environment in Istanbul. It is not conflicting. It is part and parcel of this history. So that citizenship concept is beyond ethnic, religious, tribal identities. All citizens are equal. Exactly what happened in Medina by Professor ﷺ when he was implementing justice. He was not looking to the Asabiyya or others. So this is the third. Why do we have now conflict in that sense? For example, for Bashar Assad, his sect is the basic of his identity and citizenship is being defined on that. Or for an Arab nationalist, Turkish or Iranian nationalist or many others, it is just one, if it is just one sect, one ethnicity, you will be having a divisive citizenship. We can easily, I don't see this as a contradiction. In my party, and Alawite, as my deputy chairman, there is one leading Alawite organizer, leader from Alawites, Sunnis, Kurds, Turkomans, Armenian. We are all together and meeting today. We had a Zoom meeting like what we are having today because of this isolation of coronavirus. And we are approaching to each other as equal citizens of a state. For us, patriotism is important. To respect to national interest does not mean to act against other nations. But if I don't have a sense of consciousness of humanity, my consciousness of Islam is not inclusive. If I don't have a inclusive approach of civilizational approach, my concept of citizenship, modern national citizenship, is not fully integrated. And the fourth, for some people it might be changing, is the city identity. City identity. Yes, I am a man of Istanbul. But people are asking, I wrote another book which is translated in English, I hope it will be published soon, Cities and Civilizations. People are asking me who are the most influential professor or your professor who has it. I say there are human beings, but I have another professor who taught me from my childhood until now. One is Konya, the other one is Istanbul. Because in every corner of Istanbul, like a teacher, I learned that a Muslim mosque, a Christian church, a Jewish synagogue was in the same streets in Fatih where I live. So from my childhood, I learned multiculturalism. From my childhood, I learned respect to others.
Amazing.
This is if you are from a very narrowly defined tribal background, then your concept of humanity is, or your concept of Islamhood is limited to that tribe. All the others are like the easily making takfir. But I am reading Ghazali, Ibn Rushd, Ibn Sina, and Muhyiddin al-Arabi as my teachers equal to each other.
Fantastic.
I am not excluding them. In Ramadan, usually in my political activity even today, from Sahur until noon, I am just reading and writing. I am a scholar until noon. Afternoon, I am a politician. Not a secular division, but without reading these. And in these days, I am reading Tevilat of Muhyiddin al-Arabi.
Nice.
But at the same time, I am reading Ibn Kathir. I want to see different aspects of Islam. But if you think that your Islam, your approach is the only Islam, then there will be a fight. Then forget the others. You will fight against each other. And then together you want to fight others. Today, there is a need of a new mentality. There is not one stereotype of, there is one humanity, but there is not one stereotype of human being. From plurality to unity, from unity to plurality, this is the dialectic of humanity, human history. Now it is time, instead of stereotypes, first among Muslims, we have to respect each other, be inclusive, then call other people, they should be inclusive as well. Today, we have these big problems because of this absence. And I agree with this question, I mean, the essence of this question, but the answer is be more inclusive, be more human before claiming to be more Muslims, to be better Muslim. First, be better human being, because without being a better human being, you cannot be a better Muslim. Without being a better Muslim, you cannot be an inclusive citizen in the sense of respecting others. These are all interconnected. It is up to you how to approach to this dilemma to resolve.
Thank you very much, Professor. I think that's a fitting answer on which to end this session, and our great gratitude to you to setting aside your time of study with the heavy weights of the Islamic intellectual tradition to spend some time with us. And we would love to have you back, inshallah, at some point. And my apologies also to all those listeners whose questions we couldn't get to, but I'm sure you'll understand that we tried our best. And this is a month of forgiveness. So do forgive us for that and keep us all in your prayers. Jazakumullah khair, Professor. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Walaikum salam, Brother Yahya. Best greetings to the families and to all of our friends all over the world. Those who are listening,
Yes.
please extend my regards, greetings, and salams to everybody in your family, in your countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Once again, want to
Buddha
thank
Hafiz.
you.
Ma salama. Buddha Hafiz. Allah Emanet. In different versions.
Once again, thank you so much, everyone. On behalf of Islamic Courses, Yahya, Professor, we've still got a massive number of questions all around the world, 5 continents, dozens of questions. Professor, as you can see, the demand is huge. So inshallah, if you give us permission, we'd like to invite you back once Corona.
Of course, anytime.
And maybe do another Zoom session, and hopefully we can do some great work. Thank you.
Anytime.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. Assalam.